She was just a janitor, ignored, invisible, forgotten, until one accidental moment changed everything. When a high-powered CEO heard her mimic a child's voice, he didn't just hear talent, he heard a miracle, from mopping floors to voicing. Beloved cartoon characters, Elena's journey proves that even the quietest voice can echo across the world. This is the emotional rise of a woman no one believed in, until the whole world listened. Welcome to Larry's Zone, a space dedicated to sharing emotional and heartwarming stories capable of healing hearts and reminding us of the importance of empathy in human lives. The corridors of Nova Spark advertising were silent after hours. Bright posters of million-dollar campaigns hung like trophies on the pristine walls, and the hum of innovation still echoed faintly in the air. But in the silence, another sound floated through the studio. A soft, high-pitched voice, mimicking a cartoon squirrel trying to open a jar of peanut butter. It was Elena. Mop in one hand, she spun around the recording booth like it was a stage, her oversized janitor's jumpsuit swishing at her ankles. Her voice morphed fluidly from a hyper little squirrel to a sulky baby dragon throwing a tantrum. She giggled at her own silly monologue, twirling her mop like a baton, unaware that someone was listening. Damien Cross stood frozen just beyond the glass wall, eyes wide, brow furrowed, not in confusion, but in awe. He hadn't meant to stay late, he rarely did, but something about the silence tonight had felt peaceful, and now, this voice. He pushed open the studio door. Elena shrieked, nearly dropping the mop. "I'm sorry," she gasped, cheeks flushed. "I didn't know anyone." "Was that voice," Damien interrupted, stepping inside slowly, "was that all you?" Elena blinked. "Yes, sir. I didn't mean to." "No, don't apologize," he said, eyes narrowing in that curious, calculating way CEOs have when they stumble upon gold. "We had a voiceover scheduled today. A child was supposed to do it for our new snack ad, but the kid's family left the country last minute. We were going to push the recording." Elena stood awkwardly, hands gripping the mop handle. "Okay. I need you to try something," Damien said, motioning to the recording mic. "Just humor me." Elena shook her head quickly. "No, I can't. I clean floors. I'm not—" "You just gave a cartoon squirrel a full-on personality crisis over peanut butter." Elena looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor she just mopped, but something in Damien's expression wasn't mocking. It was serious, hopeful, maybe even respectful. She hesitated, then stepped into the booth. Through the glass, Damien handed her a script. "Just read this. It's for Fizzy Wizzy, a new sparkling candy for kids. The voice should be sweet, high, excited, like you were just—" "Now?" Elena took a deep breath. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the headset. The red light blinked on. Silence. Then, in a bright, bubbly tone, she chirped, "Fizzy Wizzy, the candy that makes your tongue giggle." Damien leaned back in his chair, his lips parting in quiet amazement. Her pitch was perfect. Her inflection, playful, believable, completely original. Elena ran through the rest of the lines, slipping naturally into the character. By the time she was done, Damien was already drafting an email to the creative team. "Stay here," he said. "Please." She nodded, half in a daze. 15 minutes later, the room was packed with 3 copywriters, 2 sound engineers, and the head of voice direction, all roused from their beds or nearby bars by a CEO who never said please. Until tonight, they listened. And within seconds, they knew. When Elena stepped out of the booth again, she was met with stunned applause. Tears pricked her eyes. "Who trained you?" one of the engineers asked. "No one," she said softly. "I used to make up voices to make my little brother laugh when he was sick. It became a habit." Damien's voice cut through the crowd. "How would you feel about doing this officially?" She looked at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "Voice work," he said. "We'll compensate you, training, contracts, the works." Her heart pounded. "But I—" I'm the janitor." Not anymore. The words stunned her. Later that night, Elena sat on her twin mattress in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the recording of her own voice on a flash drive Damien had given her. Her name had never mattered much, just a label that teachers forgot, bosses ignored, and people mispronounced. But now, her voice mattered. And in the quiet of the room, she listened to it over and over, laughing at the silly lines, crying at the fact that for once, someone hadn't just heard her, they'd seen her. Tomorrow she would still wake up before dawn. She'd still scrub the same floors and empty the same bins. But everything had changed. Because tonight, a girl who spoke, like a cartoon squirrel, was asked to stay behind, and someone important had listening. Elena stood outside Studio B, clutching her new ID badge like it might vanish if she blinked too long. The word talent was printed beneath her name. It didn't feel real. 3 weeks had passed since the night Damien Cross discovered her. 3 weeks of early morning janitorial shifts, followed by late-night voiceover sessions. 3 weeks of learning how to breathe into a mic, emote with just her tone, and believe she was more than just a mop and bucket. Still, every time she stepped inside that studio, Elena waited for someone to say it was all a mistake. "You're here early," Damien said, appearing beside her like a ghost in a perfectly tailored suit. "I didn't want to be late," she replied, straightening. "Punctuality suits you," he said with a half smile. "Come on, we're doing test runs for the new animated series pitch." They walked into the studio together, though Elena still trailed a step behind, unsure if she deserved to walk beside a man like him. Damien Cross was the kind of CEO who didn't just command a room. He redesigned its gravity. Everything pulled toward him. He was brilliant, charming, exacting, and yet, somehow, patient with her. "Your job today," Damien said as they entered, "the booth, is to bring life to Luna the lollipop fairy. Think glitter, sugar, and just enough sass." Elena took a breath. "Got it." She stepped up to the mic, script in hand. The red light blinked on. "Hi there, sugar stars," she chirped, twirling her voice into something sparkly and mischievous. "I'm Luna, and I'm here to make your taste buds twinkle." Laughter exploded from the sound booth. Elena glanced through the glass. The creative team was grinning. One even gave her a thumbs up. The red light clicked off. "That was perfect," said the director. "Again, exact same tone, but try it with a little more giggle in the twinkle." She nodded and ran it again, and again, and again. By the end of the session, her voice was scratchy, but her heart was full. For the first time in years, she wasn't invisible. Back in the break room, Elena poured herself a coffee, her hands trembling just slightly. The other voice talents were chatting nearby, polished, confident people who had been in the business for years. She'd overheard one call her the janitor with the baby voice last week. They didn't speak to her much, but they didn't seem cruel, just confused, maybe a little threatened. Elena, right? A woman approached, petite, chic, and smiling wide. "I'm Trina. You did Luna's voice today." Elena nodded cautiously. "You nailed it. I mean, seriously, you've got a gift." "Thanks," Elena replied softly. "Don't let the others bother you," Trina whispered, nodding toward the rest of the room. "Some folks hate when newcomers skip the long road, but talent's talent." It was the first time someone from that side had spoken to her like she belonged. "Thanks," she said again, her throat tightening. "You'll do great," Trina added. "Just remember who you are. Don't get lost in the noise." That night, Elena returned home to her tiny apartment, voice tired and soul-buzzing. She curled up on her bed and opened a shoebox under her mattress. Inside were old voice recorder tapes, scratchy clips of her at 10 years old, making up characters for her sick little brother Milo. His voice had faded from the world years ago, lost to a disease they couldn't afford to fight. But her voice had remained, carrying his laughter like a secret melody. She played one. "Do the sleepy giraffe again," Milo's tiny voice begged. Elena, age 11, replied in a slow, yawning voice. "I don't sleep standing up. I nap." Dramatically. His laugh, real, pure, full of life, echoed through her dark room. Tears welled up, spilling down her cheeks. She whispered, "I'm doing it, Milo, just like we dreamed." At Novaspark, the demand for Elena's voice surged. Clients requested her specifically. The Candy Girl, the Giggle Queen, the Fairy Voice. Nicknames floated through the office. She booked a serial campaign, a cartoon pilot, and a children's audiobook deal within days. With Damien's encouragement, she signed a formal contract. A lawyer explained the terms, and her eyes widened at the first paycheck. More money than she'd made in 6 months of cleaning offices. She paid off her late rent, bought new shoes, upgraded to a second-hand laptop, and sent a box of art supplies to the community center in her old neighborhood, just like she and Milo used to dream of doing. But success also brought new shadows. At her locker one afternoon, she found a note. "You're not special. You're lucky. Don't forget it." No name, no signature, just the sharp sting of envy dressed as truth. Elena folded it quietly and tucked it away. She would not give her fear a stage. One late evening, she passed Damien in the hallway. He was standing alone, eyes glued to his phone, jaw tight. "Everything okay?" she asked. He looked up, startled, then softened. "It's fine, just agency politics." "Want me to do a squirrel voice to make you laugh?" she offered. Half joking, he chuckled. "Honestly, that might help." She gave him her most outrageous chipmunk accent. "Sir, the agency is under attack by snack monsters." He laughed, genuine and free, and she couldn't help smiling too. "You have no idea how needed that was," he said quietly. "This place can be relentless." They stood in silence for a moment. "You're doing good, Elena," Damien added. "I hope you know that." "I'm trying," she whispered. "No," he said firmly. "You're not just trying, you're changing the game." That night, Elena dreamed of stars. Not the kind that flicker in the sky, but the kind that glow in children's eyes when they hear a voice and believe in magic. And for the first time in her life, Elena didn't just feel seen. She felt heard. The call came during a recording session. Elena had just finished voicing a bubbly rainbow-colored alien for a new animated series when her phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. She stared at it for a moment, her heart thudding with that instinctual warning, "This isn't good." She excused herself from the studio and stepped into the hallway. The voice on the other end was sharp, clipped, and too familiar. "Elena? It's Carmen from the Chronicle, the local tabloid." Her breath caught. "We've been following your rise. Pretty incredible story. Janitor turned voice star? Cinderella level. Thought you might want to give a comment before we run a piece." Elena's mouth went dry. "A comment?" "Just a little background, family, upbringing. Nothing major, but people want to know who you really are, especially since someone tipped us off about your mother." She leaned against the wall, nausea twisting in her stomach. "What about my mother?" "She's agreed to talk, said she hasn't seen you in years, that you ran off and changed your name." Elena ended the call without another word. The truth was uglier than any headline. Her mother had never understood her. She'd worked double shifts at diners, worn bitterness like perfume, and told Elena that dreams were for people with trust funds and last names that meant something. "You can't eat a fantasy," she'd said the day Elena dared to mention voice acting as a career. When Milo got sick, it had gotten worse. Medical bills, late rent, government forms in triplicate. Elena had tried to help, working, cooking, staying up to soothe Milo with stories and silly voices. But after he passed, Her mother had collapsed into a rage that never ended. Elena moved out at 18. They hadn't spoken since. Now that Elena's name was out there, her voice on commercials, her face appearing in animated series promos, her mother wanted to reconnect, or more likely take her piece of the spotlight. The ache in Elena's chest throbbed for hours. That night she sat in the Nova Spark lounge long after everyone had left. The floor-to-ceiling windows showed a glittering skyline, but all she could see was the dingy one-bedroom apartment of her childhood, the broken couch, the smell of mildew and anger. "You okay?" She turned to find Damien, loosened tie and coffee in hand. Elena shook her head. "Not really." He sat beside her, waiting. "There's a story coming out. About my past. My mom. She's selling me out for attention." His jaw tightened. "I can get our legal team involved." "No," she whispered. "It's not lies. Just the ugly truth." Damien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Elena, every person in this building has something in their past they're ashamed of. But yours, it made you strong. You're still standing. That matters more than any gossip." She blinked back tears. "What if people don't want the real me? What if they only want the fairy voice, not the girl who came from nothing? Then they're not your people." Simple, clear, and somehow exactly what she needed to hear. The article dropped 2 days later. From mop buckets to microphones, the janitor with a golden voice. The tone was half inspiring, half sensational. It mentioned her rough childhood, her brother's death, her estranged mother's version of events. The media storm erupted instantly. Some people pitied her. Others criticized the sob story rise. But most were stunned by how she'd managed to climb out of so much. Elena didn't respond. Instead, she asked for a meeting with Nova Spark's PR team and did something no one expected. She wrote her own story, a blog post, a video, a message to every kid who'd been told they were too poor, too weird, too small to matter. She spoke about grief, resilience, and the power of pretending, how voices gave her joy when real life didn't. The post went viral, celebrities shared it, teachers used it in classrooms, parents messaged her to say her words helped their kids believe in themselves, and just like that, Elena stopped being a novelty. She became a symbol. A week later, she received a voicemail. "Elena, it's Mom. I saw your video. Everyone's talking about you. I just wanted to say you look good. Maybe we could meet. Just talk." Elena played it twice, then deleted it. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't something you owed people just because they showed up late, especially not when you were finally learning how to breathe without guilt. Her next job was the biggest yet, a lead voice role in a blockbuster animated movie about a toy store that came to life at night. She voiced the main character, a tiny, brave, wind-up mouse named Nibsy who just wanted to find where she belonged. On the first day of recording, the director handed her the final monologue. It read, "They said I was just a squeaky voice in a broken box, but sometimes the smallest voices echo the loudest." Elena read the line into the mic, tears stinging her eyes. She wasn't pretending to be Nibsy, she was Nibsy. In a private studio afterward, Damien knocked on the glass. "Hey," he said, "you're trending again." Elena smiled faintly. "Hopefully for the movie, not my tragic backstory." "Both," he said. "You turned pain into purpose. That's rare." He walked in and handed her a folder. This came in. Toy Time Animation wants you as their official voice ambassador. Commercials, series, events. Her breath caught. "Are you serious?" Damien nodded. "Welcome to the big leagues." She sat in stunned silence. After a beat, she said softly, "I used to dream I'd get here, but when I imagined it, I was always someone else, someone polished, not me." "You're exactly who you need to be," Damien replied. "That's why it worked." Elena looked out the window at the city, chaotic, brilliant, alive. Her voice, once just a whisper in the dark, now belonged to the world. Elena stood under the blinding lights of the Toy Time animation gala, wrapped in a gown that sparkled like stardust and didn't come with a clearance tag. A red carpet coiled beneath her heels, reporters shouted her name, and flashes from cameras strobed like lightning. Just months ago she had scrubbed floors beneath those lights. Now they followed her. Her voice, once a private comfort born in poverty and grief, was the voice of the beloved Nibsy the mouse, now adored by children across the country. Plush toys bore her catchphrases. Parents mimicked her squeaky giggle to coax smiles out of toddlers. "Elena," a journalist called, "how does it feel to go from janitor to icon?" She smiled, steady but warm. "It feels like a miracle you earn one step at a time." The headline the next day read, "America's New Sweetheart, Elena's Rise from Scrubber to Star." But behind that sweetness, tides were shifting. With fame came fans, and with fans came pressure. Elena's schedule filled with interviews, voice sessions, charity events and branding deals. Endorsement offers poured in, kids' toothpaste, cereal, digital books. She now had a manager, a publicist, a stylist, and a personal assistant named Lila, who was somehow both 10 steps ahead and never out of breath. At first, Elena loved the pace, the attention, the chance to say yes to everything. But over time, yes began to taste like exhaustion. One afternoon, she found herself sitting in a studio, staring at a mic, unable to produce the voice that had made her famous. "Let's take 5, the director called. Elena fled to the bathroom and locked herself in a stall. Her reflection in the mirror was flawless, airbrushed by makeup, trimmed with designer fabric, but behind her eyes she saw the cracks. She missed the silence, the nights of whispering into a second-hand recorder, the freedom to be silly, raw, unseen. Now she had to perform joy, and that joy was running thin. Damien noticed first. "You've stopped laughing," he said during one of their rare catch-ups. "You used to laugh so easily." She looked away. "I'm just tired." "Tired is okay, but lost, that's different." "I'm not lost." He raised an eyebrow. "A month ago, you asked to voice a dancing spoon for a soup commercial. You used to ask if the character had a soul." She flinched. "I think you need a break," Damien said. "Not from the work, from the noise." The next day, Elena didn't go to the studio. She turned off her phone, told Lila to hold all calls, and she did something she hadn't done since Milo died. She went to the lake. It wasn't a fancy place, just a stretch of still water hidden behind a chain of trees outside the city. She and Milo used to go there, on weekends, back when things were hard but still filled with wonder. They'd feed ducks and invent voices for every bird and frog and fisherman who passed by. Sitting on the edge of the dock, shoes off, breeze in her hair, she pulled out her old voice recorder. It still worked. Click. "Hi, Milo," she whispered. Guess what? I'm tired. Not of you, never of you, just of being everyone else." She closed her eyes and let her voice fall into the quiet. "I miss your laugh. I miss when this was just for fun. You would have reminded me that joy isn't a job, it's a gift." When she stood to leave, her heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. Returning to Nova Spark, she requested to write her own scripts. "Just one," she said to the creative director. "A small story. No product, no agenda, just a voice that matters." What emerged was a short animated film titled The Button Drawer. It was about a lonely girl who collected broken buttons and gave them personalities. Ones that made her laugh, made her brave, made her feel less alone. Elena voiced every character. Each voice had roots in someone she loved or had lost. The studio released the short as a side project, unsure how it would land. It went viral in 2 days. Teachers emailed. Therapists called it healing. A children's grief center asked if They could use it in their programs. Kids began sending in buttons with stories attached. One child wrote, "I made a voice for my dad's jacket button. He passed away last year. Now he talks to me again." Elena cried for hours. In the wake of the button drawer, something changed. She wasn't just the giggle girl anymore. She was an artist. Creative freedom followed. She got to choose projects, decline endorsements that didn't align. She started mentoring voice actors from underprivileged backgrounds, even offering scholarships through a new fund called the Milo Project. Damien met her in the hallway one day, arms crossed, smiling wide. "You've outgrown us," he said. She blinked. "What do you mean? You're not just a Nova Spark talent anymore, you're a movement." Elena swallowed hard. "I don't want to leave. You don't have to, but you should lead." He handed her a file. "I want to give you your own label, a voice division, run by you, for storytellers like you." Her hands shook as she opened the folder. It was real. Her name, her brand, her vision. "I don't know how to run a company," she whispered. "You didn't know how to be famous either," Damien said. "And look what you did." That night, Elena returned home, curled on the couch, and played the button drawer. On her tablet, she listened to each voice she had given life to, each one soft, bright, trembling, powerful. And in the final line, spoken in the smallest, sweetest voice of all, she heard herself say, "Even broken things can tell the most beautiful stories." The sign went up on a Thursday, Little Voice Studios, founded by Elena Maris. It hung from the top floor of a downtown building wrapped in glass and light. The studio space inside wasn't grand, just 3 soundproof booths, a writer's room, and an open floor filled with cozy couches and watercolor murals painted by local artists. But to Elena, it felt like the moon. This wasn't just a career milestone, it was a sanctuary, a place for voices that didn't fit, for accents too different, for tones too soft, for dreams that didn't speak loud enough to be heard in traditional halls. Her vision was simple: create magic, not just money. And one by one, people who shared that vision started walking through the door. Her first hire was a young man named Trey, 22, nervous smile, and a stutter that made most auditions unbearable. But when he read for her behind closed doors, telling a bedtime story in a voice full of wonder and breathless hope, Elena knew he had it. That's something special. She cast him in a children's audiobook series called The Night Gardeners, and after release, the reviews poured in. His voice makes you feel like you're sitting under stars. "My daughter's afraid of the dark, but Trey makes her feel brave." Elena cried reading those comments. She knew how much it meant to finally be enough, just the way you were. Little Voice Studios flourished in its first year. They released animated shorts, educational songs, mindfulness meditations for kids struggling with anxiety, and even an entire podcast narrated by children with disabilities. Every project had heart, purpose, voice. Elena's days filled with laughter, creativity, and mentorship. Her nights were quieter now. No red carpets, no long hotel hallways, just tea and reading scripts curled in a big chair with her rescue dog snoring at her feet. It was peace, a kind she'd never known. But peace has a strange side effect. It makes you think about things you've buried, and sometimes people. The letter came in the fall, handwritten, slanted, familiar. "Dear Elena, I saw your studio in the news. You've done more than I ever thought possible. I know I wasn't a good mother. I was angry, and I took it out on you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm proud. Mom." Elena read the note over and over. She didn't cry. She didn't know what she felt, honestly, just the weight of history, the echo of nights alone, the silence that followed fights, the cold absence of comfort when Milo died. But she also felt something new. closure. She didn't need an apology to heal. She had built a life so rich in purpose, it softened the edges of the past. Still, she took the letter, tucked it in a drawer labeled Personal Archives, and moved forward. Months passed. Then came an unexpected call from Pickstream, the most prestigious animation company in the country. They were producing a new feature film, big budget, global release. And they wanted Little Voice Studios to cast and lead the voice direction. Elena froze. Pickstream was a dream. Untouchable. The kind of studio that won Oscars. "You don't have to say yes," Damien said over dinner that night. "But you should know they're serious and they're watching how you lead this next chapter." Elena stared at her glass. "What if I fail?" "You won't," he said simply. "But what if I do?" Damien smiled. "Then you'll fail authentically. And no one does that better than you." Elena said yes. Production began. The film, Whistlewood, was a whimsical adventure about a tiny village hidden in the walls of a crumbling library, where forgotten objects came to life each night to protect the books from being lost to time. It was poetic, emotional, woven with themes of memory, belonging, and resilience. Elena cast every voice from her in-house talent. Some were raw, some were unsure, some had never been in a movie before. But she trained them, believed in them, and they bloomed. During recording sessions, she cried as one girl, born mute but recently learning to speak through vocal therapy, whispered the final line of the film. "We are the stories that refuse to be forgotten." When Whistlewood premiered, audiences wept. Critics called it the soul of childhood wrapped in velvet sound. And when Elena took the stage at the National Animation Awards that winter, holding a golden trophy, she stood in front of a crowd of thousands, her old janitor badge tucked in her clutch, and said, "I used to clean up after people who created dreams. Now I get to help make them." She looked into the camera. "To every child hiding their voice, thinking no one will ever want to hear it, trust me. Your voice is needed, and one day it will find its home." That night, alone in her apartment, Elena pulled out her old recorder once again. She clicked it on. "Hi, Milo," she said softly. "Guess what? We made a movie, a real one, with broken things that come to life and protect what matters. I think you would have liked it." She paused, smiling through tears. "I'm not scared anymore, not of my voice, not of being seen. I found my people, I found my place, and you were right. Pretending was just the beginning." She clicked it off, and for the first time in a long while, she slept without dreaming of the past, because she was finally living the future. It was a rainy spring morning when Elena received the letter that would mark the end of a chapter and the beginning of something far greater. The seal on the envelope was gold, embossed with the symbol of the National Media Arts Academy. Inside, an invitation. "In recognition of your contribution to storytelling and cultural impact, you are hereby invited to deliver the keynote address at this year's Honors Gala." Elena stared at the words, stunned. She'd once cleaned gum off the floors of people who got invited to events like this. Now she would speak at one. The day arrived faster than expected. Elena's gown shimmered under the soft chandelier lights of the historic theatre, where generations of creatives had taken the stage before her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the microphone. She looked out at the faces, producers, animators, actors, sound engineers, students. Some of them probably didn't know who she was. That was fine. They would. She took a breath. "When I was 10, I learned how to mimic voices, not because I wanted attention, but because it was the only way to feel like someone else. Someone not stuck in a house full of anger and silence." The room hushed. "I used to believe the sound of your voice had to be loud to matter, or polished, or pretty. But the truth is, Every voice matters, especially the ones that go unheard. The longest, she told them about the mop, the childlike voice, the first mic, about Milo, about grief, about finding healing in characters who didn't judge or abandon. She ended with a message she now lived by. Never underestimate a quiet voice. It might just be the one that changes everything. The applause was thunderous, but even louder than the clapping was the stillness she felt inside. Not nerves, not performance, peace. Elena could have stopped there. She had more than enough accolades, financial security, artistic freedom. She could have slipped into comfort, but that wasn't Elena. She had one more dream, to give back what had been given to her. So, she started the Whispers Initiative, a touring mobile studio that brought professional recording equipment to underfunded schools and hospitals across the country. The van was painted like a cartoon castle, with murals of every character Little Voice Studios had created. The goal? Simple. Let kids tell their stories. At each stop, Elena sat down with children, some sick, some grieving, some simply unheard, and helped them record anything they wanted. Fairy tales, poems, diary entries, songs. She didn't care if they whispered. She just wanted them to speak. One day, at a children's center in Denver, a 6-year-old girl named Maddie, who'd lost her ability to walk in a car accident, recorded a story about a girl with rocket shoes who soared over everyone else and built a cloud castle. When Elena played it back for her, Maddie whispered, "Is that really me?" Elena smiled through tears. "That's you, baby girl. And it's beautiful." As the years passed, Elena's legacy grew, not as a celebrity, but as a cultivator of dreams. Cartoon characters she voiced lived on in lunchboxes, bedtime stories, school plays. Her studio became a pipeline for overlooked talent, and the kids she mentored, they began to mentor others. Even her old apartment, once a dusty walk-up filled with sorrow, was turned into a creative shelter for teen girls who needed a safe space to write, to record and rest. It was called Milo House. On the 10th anniversary of Little Voice Studios, Damien hosted a surprise tribute event. "Every now and then," he said to a full room, "someone enters your life not to compete, not to outshine, but to illuminate." Elena didn't just light a path for herself, she lit it for everyone behind her. When Elena was called to the stage, she didn't bring a speech. She brought her old voice recorder. The audience leaned in as she clicked the familiar button. "Hi, Milo," her voice echoed through the speakers. "It's been 10 years, and I still talk to you every day. Not out loud, not always, but you're here in every story, every laugh, every time I help someone find their voice." People wiped tears, even Damien. "I thought you were the last good thing in my life, but it turns out you were the first." She clicked it off. No mic drop, no drama, just truth. The next morning, Elena visited the lake again, the same quiet water, the same breeze, but this time she wasn't there to remember. She was there to thank. A few children were nearby, feeding ducks. One turned to her and shouted, "Hey, you're the Nibsy voice!" Elena grinned. "I am. Can you do the laugh?" She looked at the small group, nodded once, and let out Nibsy's iconic squeaky giggle. They exploded into giggles of their own. She stayed with them a while, helping them name the ducks, inventing voices for each one. The moment was pure, unfiltered joy, the kind that didn't need an audience. As the sun set, Elena sat alone on the dock, the same spot she used to sit when the world was too loud. Now, it was just quiet enough. She didn't pull out her recorder. This time, she didn't need to. The voice that once saved her had done far more than survive. It had flourished. It had comforted, entertained, empowered, and most of all, it had stayed. If enjoyed this story, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories.